live while everyone else sleeps normal. I would do one thing differently. I would protect my kidneys at the cellular level because nobody told me to. My kidneys were failing for years and I didn't know it. The foam in my urine, thought it was dehydration. The fatigue, thought I was getting older. My doctor said drink more water, cut sodium.
You just connect the dots and you're like, well, then the next logical step is he attacks Iran. The Iranians were led by a very pragmatic leadership, yes, but the Americans have killed them all. And rather than admit the problem, their next step is trying to bury the problem.
Zhang Xuqin, otherwise known as Professor Zhang in some circles, says that he has nailed down the real reason that Trump launched the war in Iran, and he tells Danny Jones on his podcast the reasoning he has, and let's just say it's a little bit different than the reasoning many dissidents have for Trump having launched this war, and I thought there's some really interesting concepts here, some of which are definitely worthy of discussion because they're not exactly reported in the corporate media. So let's just take a look at this. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hype it if you can.
I had a hard time believing that Trump could do this whole war in Iran just because Netanyahu schmoozed him. Said, oh, you're going to be looked at like, one of the greatest presidents in American history. Everyone's going to love you. It's going to be the best thing America has ever accomplished when you take down Iran. It's going to be super easy. Just with words like that and compliments and buttering him up. I found it very hard to believe that would be possible. But the more I think about it, is like maybe because it seems to be that way with everyone else. All you really need to do is just, talk nice about him in public.
And the people who are the most influenced over Donald Trump right now happen to believe in his eschatology.
Yeah, right.
But also, like Sean Hannity, they talk on the phone every day. Fox News, he watches 3 hours of Fox News every single day. Ali Harb, Peter Hegseth, the people who most believe in this have no sway over Trump right now.
Well, do you think that the Epstein stuff had anything to do with him invading Iran? Because there's not great, but it's a fucking crazy email that was in the Epstein files. I believe it was in 2017 or 2018, a year before he died, where he said in an email to, I can't remember who the email was to, but Epstein wrote in an email saying that if Trump feels cornered like a rat, he will invade Iran.
That could be true, but I predicted he would do so 2 years ago, right? And how was I able to do so?
Yeah.
Just pattern recognition, right? I was connecting the dots. Trump comes into office, right? And what does he do? He gets out of the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal, right? He's like, screw that, we're not doing that. That's number one. Right. He moves
to Jerusalem. He moves the embassy to Jerusalem, which is a no-go for past presidents. Like, this is the worst thing you could possibly do for the Middle East. But Trump said, screw that, we're moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. That's number 2. Number 3 is he recognized Israel's control of the Golan Heights. Okay, that's number 3. Number 4 is he orders the assassination of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani.
Yeah.
Right? You just connect the dots and you're like, well, then the next logical step is he attacks Iran.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some credence to that. In many ways, this war had its stage set in the first Trump term. He did all those things in addition to forging the Abraham Accords and creating a new normalization alliance for Israel in the Middle East. All those things were for Israel. It was beholden to Israel and Israel's interests and the interests of the Israel lobby. But to put this on eschatology as if Trump is religiously driven to do this, I don't think there's much evidence to suggest that. It is true, many of these diehard evangelical Zionists and Jews and some other people that believe in end times eschatology that will bring about the second coming do have sway over Trump, but Trump himself is not a particularly religious person. He's admitted that. In fact, in one point, he even said, I think I'm probably going to hell. I think this is more simplistically explained by the top donors to Trump, his campaign overseers like Miriam Adelson, Paul Singer, Joe Lonsdale, Peter Thiel. They're all diehard Zionists. They are all attached to the Israel lobby and Israel's ambitions for the include deposing the Iranian regime or destabilizing it. That pretty much is the Hail Mary of the entire clean break strategy that began in the mid-90s. At least it was drafted in the mid-90s to break from the Oslo Accords. I think that it could explain this much more so. It could also be blackmail, because even though what Zhang said is right about the first term, we know that Trump did resist launching a war against Iran in that first term when pro-Israel neocon psychopaths like Mike Pompeo and John Bolton were trying to get him to do that at the end of his first term. So he could have done that, but he didn't. We have to ask ourselves, well, why is he doing it now? Maybe this was a secret arrangement behind the scenes where he said, Miriam, if you're going to give me $150 million, we're going to launch that war you want, while telling the electorate, as politicians often do, that he's not going to launch a new war. I think those two things might be more, a reasonable Occam's razor than him being driven by eschatology.
Right. So, I mean, there's a pattern of behavior, right? And again, like, the only explanation I have is this is all eschatological, because just from a pure geopolitical perspective, this makes no sense. None of this makes any sense. Why are you destroying the global economy, right? I mean, like, the Iranians, everyone knew the first thing the Iranians will do is close off the Strait of Hormuz and attack the energy infrastructure of
the Gulf states.
Why wouldn't they do so? They have to save themselves, right? You force their hand.
Right.
And Trump's like, no, I didn't know that. Right?
Yeah, it's insane that they didn't game this out.
Right.
It's
also,
crazy to me.
Even today, we don't know why this war is happening. Trump has yet to articulate a good reason.
Well, because we can't let them have a nuclear weapon, according to Hegseth in that appearance that he made in front of Congress in July.
Right. But remember, before the Americans assassinated the Ayatollah, he had a fatwa.
Yes, he did.
Saying no nuclear weapons for any reason.
Yep.
So, as long as he was in charge.
Not only no development of nuclear weapons, but not to ever use a nuclear weapon, let alone develop one. I actually had a former Mossad guy on here telling me that, and that's true.
Right. So you don't kill the guy. Right. Iran cannot have nuclear weapons.
Right.
Because it's a democracy. They take the religious law seriously.
You can now trade on tennis live. Make real-time predictions throughout the match, from first serve to match point, directly on Polymarket. Choose your position and live stream while you live trade, all in one app, turning every match, every set, and every point into a chance to win. Join the conversation in the live chat and choose when to cash out to close it out. New Polymarket customers get $20 toward their first trade with code LIVE20.
Shouldn't have to deal with high energy bills and constant breakdowns. If your old heating and cooling system is draining your wallet and peace of mind, we're here to help. At Luna, we believe your home should be comfortable and stress-free. That's why we're offering a brand new cooling and heating system with 0 down and easy monthly payments, so you can upgrade without the financial strain. Get a free estimate today and take the first step toward worry-free comfort. But act fast. This limited time offer won't last forever. Tap below to claim your free quote.
Yeah.
All right, so there's a few things with this. The problem with what Zhang is saying here, why he believes this is driven by eschatology, because it doesn't make any sense. It's economically destructive. Well, I agree with him on that part, but that's not why it could be driven by eschatology. Governments do things that are counterintuitive for economic interests all the time. The entire lifetime that I've had has been filled with regime change wars that have been economically catastrophic for the United States. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's all driven by eschatology. Was the wars in Syria and Libya and Somalia and Iraq and Afghanistan and the Balkans and Ukraine all for eschatology, despite the fact they had reverberations that were negative in the U.S. economy, more debt, more inflation, more loss of prosperity? I don't think so. And just put this on a bigger scale in other countries. In China, Mao launched the Great Leap Forward, which was really the Great Leap Backward, killing tens of millions of people. That had no point either, but that was an atheist regime that wasn't driven by eschatology, and he was a bloodthirsty murderer. Stalin's purges, that happened in the Holodomor, and the purges of the military that Stalin imposed. He had an atheist regime too. It wasn't exactly economically beneficial, doesn't necessitate an interest-driven in eschatology. So I don't think that's the default here. You know, it is a factor for why some people do support this war, but I don't believe that innately leads to that's Trump's kind of beating heart at the center of this whole thing.
John Kiriakou was on the show. He was telling me, he's a former CIA officer who worked in the Middle East. He was one of the guys. He captured Abu Zubaydah during the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. And he was telling me that there was 2 of these national intelligence assessments. And this is when all, 17 or 18 of the U.S. intelligence agencies, they all get together and individually, they all go into their corners and do an assessment on, does Iran have a nuclear weapon program? And independently, all 18 intelligence agencies went and did their assessment, and the head of each agency came together in a round table and unanimously decided that they all agree that Iran does not have a nuclear program.
Right.
This happened twice.
Yes. There's also something called the Millennium Challenge, where like 20 years ago, they war game a war with Iran. And the conclusion was the United States could not possibly defeat Iran in a war.
When was this?
This is called the Millennium Challenge. I believe it's 2002.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so maybe Steve,
what was it?
The Millennium Challenge. The Millennium Challenge. Yes.
Millennium Challenge.
I believe it's 2002. Okay? I could be wrong, but I believe it was 2002.
Okay.
And the war game, the conclusion was that Iran would use asymmetrical warfare.
A $250 military war game. Wow. The largest and most expensive war game in U.S. history, held from July 24 to August 15, 2002, to test network-centric warfare concepts. Keep going down. What does it say about Iran? Keep going.
Right, so they war game a war against Iran. And they kept on losing because Iran could just use asymmetrical warfare, just drones, against their aircraft carriers. There's absolutely no way for the aircraft carriers to protect against a drone swarm, which is exactly what's happening right now.
All right, so a few things about this. First of all, I think both of them are exactly right about the nuclear weapon propaganda that we were spoon-fed so much. Actually contradicts what 18 independent, so to speak, intelligence agencies. I know they're not exactly independent and they all report up through the DNI, but these agencies have been known for overstating or outright propagandizing the threat of foreign weaponry to support wars like they did in Syria and Iraq. And they said Iran doesn't have a nuke. That was all it's facade. When it comes to the Millennium Project, the Millennium Experiment, in 2002, Jung isn't exactly right about this. This was a project that was done in 2002, a war game that cost the U.S. $250 million at the time, and I think it might still be the most expensive war game ever. It was the United States coded in blue against an unnamed adversary coded in red. And sometimes that red adversary was considered Iraq, and at other times was considered Iran, but it's not true that this war simulation specifically against Iran. So it's not exactly right to say that that experiment concluded that the U.S. couldn't defeat Iran, but there were lots of risks that were widely known about when it came to Iran. A lot of the simulations and war planners and even the Pentagon and mainstream coverage of this subject did say, hey, they could close the Strait of Hormuz, they could shut down the global energy trade, or at least curtail a significant amount of it. And there's a lot of other things going against the U.S. if they launch a war there, because Iran has ballistic missiles, a lot of them that are well protected, and an insulated geographical position on Earth that insulates them, naturally through to safeguard against many of the typical exploits in military campaigns. So that much is true, but it's not exactly right that the Millennium Project dictated that the U.S. couldn't win a war in Iraq or Iran. It was an unnamed adversary coded in red.
Right.
So they knew exactly what was going to happen in 2002.
Right. And we spend like billions of dollars on a single aircraft carrier. And yeah, it's shiny and it's new, but it's not suitable for warfare against a country that does war like that.
Exactly. Another issue is sailors live in an aircraft carrier. And there's only so much time that human beings can live in a confined space, right?
Well, they're already trying to commit suicide off the aircraft carrier.
Yeah, because they've been deployed for 9 months.
Yeah.
And like the maximum you're supposed to be out deployed is 6 months. So they're all going crazy, right? And rather than admit the problem, Peter Hegseth is trying to bury the problem, right?
Yeah, the story just came out a couple days ago where there's at least 1 or 2 sailors on one of the aircraft carriers, the Abraham Lincoln maybe, who jumped overboard trying to kill themselves. The one guy was in the water for like an hour, and they didn't tell his wife or his family. They one of his friends had to reach out to his wife and tell him about that.
So again, it's very hard to understand what's going on unless you look at it from an eschatological lens.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't believe this, but they are right. You do see this situation on the USS Abraham Lincoln. The loss of morale could not be more pronounced throughout U.S. history more than it is now, and I think it is largely because of the rise of the independent media. Even, American service members, etc., can't be propagandized in the same typical fashion that has allowed or persuaded Americans to support these foolhardy efforts. And these sailors, some of which know that this war is beneficial to them, probably close to all of them know that, and they didn't exactly sign up to destabilize the next regime on Netanyahu's list. Many of them actually did enlist to protect their own communities, their states, their countries, and then their patriotism was perverted and kind of tarnished by the rulers in power and twisted to their nefarious ends. That's what this is. As far as eschatology, I don't see this, but let's see what else he has to bring here.
Right? They literally believe this is the end of the world, and they're preparing for the coming of God.
If you're a mom, then you know just how expensive it is to feed a house full of kids. Luckily, if you take just a few minutes to sign up, you can earn 3.75% APY on your savings with Chime, so your money grows faster. Plus, you get fee-free banking. So now, while I'm spending on groceries, my savings are still working for me in the background. Sign up now, and you'll thank me later.
What about my credit? Well, there is no credit checks with Clio. There's no interest. So if all you need, no minimum direct deposit needed, no pay stubs, no W-2 forms, and to top it all off, you get to choose the repayment date that works best for you. So if you're ready to stop ghosting those bills, do yourself a favor, download the Clio app, and immediately start sweating less.
So how do you predict that this Iran war is going to play out? How much longer do you think it's going to last? And what are going to be the downstream effects of it?
So the United States has become more extreme. So Trump is surrounding himself with people who are going to reinforce his religious zeal. People like Natalie Harp and Peter Hegseth.
Hey, Trump doesn't have religious zeal in terms of theistic religion. He does follow the Israel lobby as if it's a religion, but he himself does not have demonstrated, documented eschatological zeal. Now, many of the people around him do. They do believe in end times prophecies, third temple prophecies, rebuilding that to spearhead the second coming. Some niche political actors in Trump's orbit do believe in that, but again, no evidence that he does, really.
Okay, and the Israelis have gone all in this eschatology as well, but the Iranians have changed as well. So at the onset of this war, the Iranians were led by a very pragmatic leadership.
Yes,
but the Americans have killed them all.
Right.
And
they killed Soleimani, and they literally did nothing. There was no reaction.
That's right. So a lot of the pragmatic leadership, the wise moderates, have been eliminated. And who's rising in the ranks in the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, are these radicals who are eschatological. They're young, they're angry, and they want vengeance for what the United States is doing to Iran. And they're eschatological because they believe that this is the end of the world. This is the war to end all wars. And when this happens, then their Messiah, called the 12th Imam, the Mahdi, will come to lead them. So this has become a religious war on both sides. And it's almost intentional because remember, the United States had an MOU with Iran.
Yes.
And the United States kept on reneging on the MOU, which embarrassed the moderates in Iran.
Yeah.
Right? It basically delegitimized them.
He's right about delegitimizing the moderates that called for negotiations with the United States, but hardliners in Iran have inherited all the political capital that came from the United States just sabotaging its own MOU. That was a power struggle in Iran. He's not exactly right about the eschatology as it applies to the Iranian government. Now, Shiites do believe in the coming of the 12th Imam at some point. His name was Muhammad al-Mahdi. Their belief is in the 9th century. He was kind of frozen in time, and he will come back in the end times, and that is to signal an eschatological, significant event where he will be revealed to the masses. In fact, Shiites believe that he already lives in the end times, but his revealing of sorts will be kind of widely recognized and understood when that point comes. Now, the Sunnis believe in the coming of al-Mahdi as well, but they don't believe that he is the 12th Imam. The problem with this, though, is this is a niche belief even in Shiite circles. So the official government line isn't that the coming of Mahdi as the 12th Imam is imminent, not whatsoever, not any more imminent than, end times prophecies that United States Christians have, that the second coming is right around the corner. And of course, that has no biblical foundation, not the building of a third temple. The Bible says that, Jesus' coming will be like a thief in the night. There are some signs of the end times have been interpreted various ways, but none of them have the prerequisite of the construction of a third temple or the destruction of Iran, etc. Of course, some people still go on that, but again, it's not as easy as saying because some Shiites believe that we are in the end times that it's going to come to fruition. Again, I think the most likely thing is this is just an existential battle for their survival that they've been preparing for essentially for 4 decades, ever since the United States gave chemical weapons to Saddam Hussein during the Iraq-Iran war and aligned more closely with Israel and against the interests of the Iranian regime. I think that's more likely to be the Occam's razor here as to why they're dug in fighting this war against the duplicitous U.S. empire along with the genocidal Israeli regime.
And now the zealots are in control. So what Iran has said is we now refuse to negotiate with Americans, and also from now on we will go on offensive. We will no longer retaliate against bombing. We will now initiate attacks.
So as of today, what is the date today? August 19th. There's no negotiating. They're not trying to negotiate at all.
It's done. The Iranians no longer want to negotiate. And there's even discussion that the Iranians will attack as far as Europe because they believe that a lot of weaponry is coming from Europe. So if this were to happen, what's going to happen is the Ukraine war and the Iran war would merge together to engulf the entire world.
As a veteran, Congressman Vindman understands the frustrating hurry up and wait those who have served have to go through to get the health care they deserve. When my husband told his medical providers what medication he needed, they didn't listen. Now he has flare-ups, and he was told it could take up to 4 months to get another appointment. But Congressman Vindman listened, and then he took action. He's taking care of my family, and he'll take care of yours too. Call his office today.
I work with verified suppliers who offer custom orders from one piece, logo color, packaging, samples in as fast as 7 days, full visibility into factory certifications and reviews, small batches, fast turnaround. Download the Alibaba.com app now.
Well, we're already seeing the beginnings of that happen, as several weeks ago, the Ukrainians destroyed several Iranian-linked vessels for saying, hey, they were being supplied by the Russians, and this was a maneuver within the spectrum of that theater of war, but you do see Zelensky possibly using this as a gambit to involve himself in the Iran conflict to say, here, I have your back, now give me more billions of dollars in weaponry to fight against Russia for the next 2 decades. That is Zelensky's aspirations here, and I hope it doesn't come to that, but we have seen the beginnings of that. as far as this war and kind of where it is in its current state, I largely agree with John. He said that the Iranians don't want to negotiate. That's exactly right. No matter how many times Trump says, hey, they're dying for a deal. They want to negotiate. They want to come to the table. There's no evidence of that. And if you follow what the Iranian government is saying, they haven't said that one time since the tanking of the MOU, since the inability of Trump to use U.S. leverage for once against Israel to get them out of Lebanon, and for working out a secret arrangement to try to get U.S. ships through the Strait of Hormuz without, deferring control to the Iranians for a time frame that the MOU recognized in point number 5. That's where we are. Now, at other times, Zhang has said that he thinks that boots on the ground are guaranteed. That's the next phase in this war. Several months ago, he made that claim. I'm not sure if he's backed off that claim. I sure hope that doesn't happen. But I'm with him here. There is an impasse because the Iranians won't negotiate, and Trump won't walk away because there's no way for him to really walk away and declare victory. Even though ultimately that's what he's going to have to do, even if he chooses to escalate or not. I mean, short of a grand invasion involving possibly 1 million American forces, which no American has the stomach for, or a nuclear war of sorts, whether it be conventional or tactical, the latter of which Elbridge Colby and the Pentagon is calling for now, we're not going to get anything but a total embarrassment. And even if you escalate, ultimately, there probably will be an embarrassment. No regime change effort has ever transpired without boots on the ground, an internal mutiny, or some kind of mercenary force that goes in there. No targeted strikes, no destruction of naval vessels has done that. No air superiority has done that by default. It always takes something else, and that's what the United States set out as a warring. And the nuclear issue has always been a red herring. That's not something that Trump has been interested in. That is illusory. Trump could have gotten into a JCPOA-like arrangement to shut down nuclear enrichment above a certain threshold, as Iran was doing from 2015 to 2018, and all circles agreeing that they were complying with every aspect of that. But he shredded it. He shredded it for the Israel lobby because the Israel lobby wanted war. They didn't want the JCPOA. That was the thing that took war off the table for Netanyahu, and that's why he insisted that Trump shred it. So while Trump was being lambasted in the United States by liberals for being a pro-Putin stooge within the halls of the government, he was actually a pro-Netanyahu stooge. It should have been Israel Gate, not Russia Gate. That's the truth. So the table was set for this war. Still opens questions as to why he didn't launch it in the first term, but more likely, I think, than eschatological reasons is that Trump was steered there by his biggest donors, by his biggest political allies, and by the people that wanted this war for 3 decades. I think that's much more likely. So we did find some agreement with John there, but a lot of the stretches to say that it has to be eschatological, I just don't buy them for all the reasons I stated. But you guys let me know what you think about this in the comments down below. Am I right? Is he right? Is it eschatology? I don't know. I'm very skeptical of that for all the reasons I said. But you let me know. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel. If this video also in the breakdown, please consider becoming a member of Liberty Vault. You can do that by clicking the join button down below. And doing that gets you immediate access to all of my videos before they go live to the general public. I think there's 7 or 8 for you to watch before anyone else right now as a member if you do that. And I appreciate your support if you do. Also, if you want a free copy of my first book, Compact of the Republic, you can click the link down below in the description. It takes you to a website. In the box at that website, just punch in your email right there, and I'll send you a full free copy of that book. No obligations whatsoever. And look, I have a few demands for this sinister, war-obsessed, Israel-first, bloodthirsty war regime, and I want to apologize for them. No more war, no more debt, no more inflation, no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.
Thank you, man.
Dude, that's like your 8th subscription. Before Fallout became one of the most iconic post-apocalyptic franchises of all time, there was a single document that tied every answer to everything, and it's called the Fallout Bible. Written by Chris Avellone, one of the original creators behind the early Fallout games, this massive collection of Q&As was released in 2002 after Fallout 2 and Fallout Tactics on the Black Isle Studios website as a way to answer fan questions and to clarify deeper lore of the series. But what started out as something as simple as a Q&A quickly turned into something much bigger. Hidden within the pages are the original intentions behind the Fallout universe, early ideas, cut content, forgotten lore, and explanations that completely change how we understand the world of Fallout. Now, officially, the Fallout Bible isn't considered canon, and if you follow this channel long enough, you know I love talking about Fallout canon. But over the years, Bethesda Game Studios has pulled ideas directly from it, bringing parts of these writings into the modern Fallout lore, which raises the interesting question. If parts of the Fallout Bible keep becoming canon, was it ever really non-canon to begin with? Today we're going to find out, because I've gone through the entire document, all 250 plus pages of it, archived thanks to the incredible community over at No Demons Allowed. And in this video, we're going to be diving into everything, from the original direction of the Fallout universe, to the obscure lore details most fans never even heard of, to the ideas that may still shape the future of the series. So whether you're here to learn something new, or just want something interesting to fall asleep to, sit back, because this is going to be the complete dive into the Fallout Bible. The first entry of the Fallout Bible was posted on January 15th of 2002 by Chris Avellone, one of the designers behind Fallout 2. And although it wasn't originally published on the Black Isle Studios website and was actually on a fan site, we'll go back into that detail in a short bit, the goal wasn't to create some massive lore document. It was actually meant to help consolidate information for Fallout Van Buren, the original version of Fallout 3 that was in development. And if that game sounds interesting to you, I'm actually working on a full deep dive covering everything about Fallout Van Buren. And if you wanted to learn more about what could have been the Fallout 3 that was canceled, definitely stick around on the channel for that and subscribe if you want to do that. But anyway, over the course of 2002, Avellone released a total of 9 entries, all spread out over 11 months. But in a very Fallout fashion twist, there is something called Entry 0, which was later released to correct the statements from the original 3 Q&As. So right away before this thing even fully takes shape, it's already going back and fixing itself, which honestly just feels pretty on brand for how Fallout lore tends to work. What is also really interesting is the term Fallout Bible. It didn't even exist when they were first beginning to release these documents or Q&As. The name actually came later on when a community veteran, Dan Wood, came up with this idea, because originally they were just simple posts answering fan questions. In fact, Chris Avellone himself wasn't a fan of the term Bible early on, because it made the whole thing sound way more official than it ever was meant to be. From his perspective, this wasn't supposed to be a definite, unquestionable source of canon. It was just extra source material for fans who wanted to learn more about the world and the background. Now, obviously, the Fallout Bible is a massive document, and as tempting as it would be to go through every single line, there's just not really the goal here of this video. Instead, I'm going to be focusing on the most important parts, the ideas, lore details, and content that either reshaped how we understand the Fallout universe or connected into surprising ways in future versions of Fallout in the game we have today. So with that, let's start right at the beginning and take a look at where this document and journey really begins. And that is with...
This is where culture moves you. Where joy is shared and every moment speaks your language. Awaken your senses.
Section 0. Now, yes, as I'm going to say, Section 0 is actually the combination of what was originally Sections 1 through 3, written between January 15th and February 25th of 2002 by Chris Avellone. Before this was all neatly compiled together, these entries were originally scattered through different Fallout fan websites, which is kind of a wild thing to think about. You know, just the idea of having a developer of one of your fan favorite games Posting on your website Q&As is absolutely crazy and definitely talks about the time. Eventually, Section 0 and everything from Section 4 onward would be hosted on the Interplay website, giving it more official home. But again, that whole idea of, like, can you imagine having a modern AAA developer answering lore Q&A questions on a random, like, Reddit? It just, and making it semi-canon, especially at the time, it's just chaotic, and it's perfectly Fallout, and it just shows how much the developers had love, and this was more definitely of a passion project versus like a money-grabbing thing. So let's get into the more interesting things from this section, starting with something that is pretty much defines the entire series of Fallout, and that is the FEV. The Forced Evolutionary Virus, or FEV, is described in both the original games and the Fallout Bible as causing widespread sterility in creatures it mutates, especially in humans. This is what leads to the creation of supermutants, and is one of the key reasons their populations can't grow naturally. The Bible also touches on ghouls in this context, which is where things start to get a bit messy. There's some implications early on that the FEV might be connected, but the general consistency both then and now is that ghouls are primarily the result of extreme radiation exposure, not the virus itself. But early on, I believe it was Chris's literally was clashing about what caused ghouls. One of them believed it was the FEV, combination of FEV and radiation, and I believe it's Tim Kaine who made it clear that he was like, no, it's just radiation, and that's what it was. But I know early on it was a debate, and it was made more evident within the Fallout Bible that ghouls are made ghouls by radiation alone. So even here, right at the start, we can already see the Fallout Bible sometimes blur the line between clearly defining what is canon and what it